Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Meta Cafe. Grab your cup of coffee or your tea, sit back and relax, and let's chat about what is happening up in the stars and the sky today. We've had a couple of days now of getting into some really intense questioning and working on some of the darker, deeper, secretive, investigative sides of ourselves. And I think all of that has been sort of a precursor to the sun moving into Scorpio, as it does this morning at about 10:20 my time. So 10, 11:20 on the East Coast. The sun will have left the sign of Libra and take us into the deeper waters of Scorpio. So good morning to everyone who's just joining us. I'm missing someone at the very top here. But I see Suzanne and Elisa and Mimi and Amy, and good morning to you ladies. And I'm sure there are more that will join us here shortly. So question, how's everybody doing today? Did anybody have like weird dreams last night? Because I'll tell you, it was a night of dreams for me. I dreamt, and they were highly symbolic dreams. In at least two of them, I was in a bathroom and there were bodily functions involved in the dream. And in one of them, there was a white wolf, and it was after my granddaughter. And literally, I'm thrashing in my bed. My husband is trying to wake me up because I'm, kicking at this wolf, trying to keep this white wolf away from my granddaughter, who, in my dream, I feel like she's got a hold of me so tight that I can't move. In reality, it was my husband because I was kicking and thrashing so much. And then there was another dream, and I just don't remember what it was. I remember when I woke up, I thought, wow, I really want to remember that one. Sadly, I did not remember that one. But I'm wondering, is that also a symptom or a sign of the sun's move out of Libra, getting ready to move? We're at the 29th degree, so it brings up a lot of stuff for us, right? We are standing at a precipice looking backwards, across the sign of Libra and everything that we've learned through the last, 29 degrees. And then also a part of us looking forward to what comes next as the sun begins its transit into the sign of Scorpio. So we'll start here first with the moon this morning. It is in void of course right now, which makes such perfect sense to me this morning as I'm wandering around almost like a zombie, not knowing, it's my sister-in-law's birthday, it's my grandson's birthday. So I'm sending off birthday messages this morning. And then I found myself sitting at the kitchen table and I'm like, don't you think you should get ready? Like, don't you think you should get dressed? So it's been a sort of, morning playing with time, even as I was just sort of in some kind of la-la land. Often that is one of the descriptions that people will give you around a void of course moon, where you're just sort of in some space in between, where there's not yet an actionable step to take and move forward. There's no way backward. So you just are kind of holding space. And that's kind of how I was feeling this morning as well. The moon is void, of course, until 12:30 p.m. my time, so 1:30, 2:30, 3:30 for you all on the East Coast, when it will then move into the sign of Virgo, and making it time for us to get to work, right? To start to take all of that moon in Leo creative imagining and ambition and drive and actually put it to some kind of use, right? Let the rubber meet the road, put the pedal to the metal, do something, right? So the question for today, remember the other 2 days ago, it was what has you stuck, blocked, or feeling limited? Yesterday, it was what are you waiting for, right? What are you waiting for was yesterday's question. And today's is, what are you ready to do? What are you ready? I should have also put, what are you ready and willing to do and or to be, right? What are you willing and ready? What are you ready and willing to do or to be? That is the logical next step after we can identify where we're stuck and we can identify what is it that we think we're waiting for, and then what are we ready to do? And are you ready and willing to do that? So that is our question today. Now, today the moon is right now, this morning, in a square to Mercury. And that is a possibility that our minds are, even though it's kind of the slow lull kind of energy, our minds may be very sharp right now, calculating, moving through ideas and seeing connections that we don't often, have that clear access to. It may not be the time necessarily to take a step while the moon is in the void, but it's certainly a time where we may see some clarity, as Neptune isn't in this mix where it can kind of confuse things and make it all misty and foggy. The moon is also in a sextile to the sun. A few days ago, remember, it was in a square, and that's where we get to that crisis of consciousness, or crisis of consciousness. There we go, consciousness. And then we remove the blocks inside of us that are holding us back, or we can see something more internalized that's been holding us to some old belief or pattern or emotional grievance or whatever it is. And we can move forward now, right? The sun in a sextile to the moon is a great time, or it should be the other way around. The moon in a sextile to the sun gives us that right of way, removes that yield sign, and lets us move forward. And also the moon will be in a trine to Uranus, which it's so interesting because not long after the sun moves into the sign of Scorpio, it will come into an opposition with Uranus. And so we're already building up to some maybe surprises, or to some, things that, unexpected, that, the very light of the sun, puts a focus on for us. And of course, today in the Pleiadian-Earth energy, we're looking at a 5 universal day. The 5 is the day that is the name, or the energy of change. And it brings up surprises and the unexpected. So we have a trine with the moon to Uranus, and we have a Pleiadian-Earth energy day of change. We have the sun moving into Scorpio, which will start to draw in that surprise and awakening and rebellious energy of Uranus. So it's interesting how these things kind of have this coherence as we move through the calendars. Today is also the day of evolving in your Pleiadian Earth energy. Evolving in the Mayan calendar is Kaban, which was the day of earthquakes or Earth. It was a very Earth-centered day and involves what's going on here on the planet. And evolving then, I have this idea of it being a day where we're shaken and stirred, like a drink. We're shaken or stirred, like stirring your coffee or your cream into your coffee or something like that, right? It's shaken and stirred kind of day. We can see new possibilities. If we can, change our perspective, we can see new possibilities. We can change the boundaries. So we've been leading up to this, right? If we're trying to identify where we've been stuck, where we were unable to break free. And in preparation for this energy that comes up now, at least for the next week, of our being able to see the new possibilities and actually take steps toward it, right? Changing those boundaries, not being okay if what you thought were your plans, if you thought what was real falls apart, and not going into that with disappointment, but sort of with the kind of excitement that says, well, I wonder what's going to come out of the ashes of this. Right? So if you're breaking away from your old life or your old way of being, this is your opportunity to embrace that and just be open to see what comes next. All right. I hope everybody's doing well. I'm going to take a quick look at the comments here, see how people are feeling. Amy says, I don't remember, but I think so because I woke up all sweaty. Ooh, yeah. I don't ever remember any of my dreams. Wish I did. Suzanne, we talked about this one time on the show. Or somebody was telling us about this. I think it might have been one of my guests one time. Put a glass of water next to your bed and put your intention into that water, that it will hold the memory of your dreams for you. When you wake up, drink that water, and voila, right? You're supposedly going to be able to remember your dreams. I mean, that's certainly something you could try. Definitely me, she says, every VOC. Colleen, good morning. She says, I'm ready for Mercury retrograde to be over. I can't even tell you the crazyville. Oh, well. Yeah, and it hasn't even started yet. I mean, we're in the shadow, and that's usually the wonkiest time. The actual retrograde begins on Halloween, and then we are out of the shadow area on December 9th, I believe it was. So it's a longer cycle. We'll get through it. Good morning, Linda. Good morning, Kristen Page. So anybody work with that question yesterday about what it is that you're waiting for? Are you waiting for an invitation? Are you waiting for the right moment? Are you waiting until you feel adequate? Are you waiting until the fear passes? What is it that you are waiting for? Because today it is all about what are you ready to do? Ready to do? What are you ready to do? What are you willing to do? What steps are you willing to take? What boundaries are you willing to test, right? And to push out a little bit further, or to, obliterate, jump over, right? And get out of that rut or out of that stuck place. So that is the question of the day. Let's see. Mimi says, just right timing as I prepare for a show the first week of November, realizing I have plenty of inventory, but still lots to do. Yeah, lots to do. We all have a lot to do. And, for the last few weeks, I've been sort of feeling overwhelmed by the amount of things I have to do and almost shutting down because of that, because I didn't know what to do first, or, how to break it into bite-sized pieces. My moon was not in Virgo. My moon in Virgo was waiting for some kind of plan to be able to execute a plan, and it wasn't forthcoming. And literally, I just had to step out there and say, just take the first step. Just take that first step. That's all we need to do, is take the first step. And we step out there, and then the universe kicks in and helps us realize what the next steps are and lays out sort of the plan. So I thought today we would take a look at what the meaning of Scorpio is. You may not be a sun in Scorpio. We're going to focus on the sun in Scorpio, but the sun is in Scorpio somewhere in your personal chart. And in my chart, Scorpio's in the fifth house is it the fourth house, fifth house cusp of, children and joy and play. And I know that every year around this time, first of all, I'm celebrating a ton of birthdays over the next few weeks. And we're getting ready for holidays here in the USA, right? The Thanksgiving holidays and Veterans Day. And then we move on into the Christmas holidays. So it seems like the sign of Scorpio often ushers in a very busy time for me with family, fourth house, and my grandchildren and children, the fifth house, and creating, a spot for joy. Now, for you guys in your own personal chart, it's going to be somewhere else. Maybe it's in the first house, and all of the energies that we're going to be talking about here in the next few minutes apply to you personally in your first house, right? Yourself, your ability to really see yourself clearly. Maybe this is going to be happening in your 10th house, which spotlights your career or your profession. Maybe it's going to be in the 9th house, where you see yourself as expansive and growing. So for each of you, you have Scorpio somewhere, right? And that is where this energy will be taking place. All right. So the sun in Scorpio at 10:20 a.m. this morning. And this is, first, let's talk about what is your sun sign. I don't think I've ever spoken to this in the 3 years I've been doing this online, because I think we all just know, right? But let's talk about it, because some of you maybe are new to astrology, or maybe you just need a reminder of what the sun represents in a chart. And literally, it represents your identity, your core essence, who you are, down deep. It is also about what motivates you and drives you, right? It is what you're learning to become. So if you are learning to become, if your sun is in Libra, let's say, you are learning to become balanced, you are learning to be able to see multiple sides of a story, and you were learning to be in harmony and be a team member, but not give yourself away as part of the team, right? Team is you and I coming together, or me and many coming together, but I don't need to lose myself in all of that, right? So a lot of different themes popping up for Libra. So what are the themes that are likely going to pop up for us in Scorpio? And this won't be exactly the same for everyone, because like I said, Scorpio is going to be in a different place for you. And you are not necessarily a Scorpio. If you're a Scorpio, then this is going to be your whole, sort of life. But for some of you, who aren't all of you, mostly you. I don't know how many out there are Scorpios versus not Scorpio. But for those of you who are not Scorpios, you may recognize these things as happening in certain areas of your life based on the house that Scorpio is sitting in. Now, when I teach astrology, I really love the idea of teaching it with keywords. And those keywords help you sort of, kind of embed in you meanings. And so let's look at some of the keywords that I would use for Scorpio. Number one, transformation. Scorpio is a sign that digs in, finds the dirt, brings it up, cleans it, and purifies it and transforms it, right? So we have a keyword about transformation. So whenever you hear Scorpio, you should think transformation. And indeed, when you look at the planets that rule the sign of Scorpio, it's Mars and it's Pluto. Pluto is very much about transformation, right? The other keyword is intensity. Scorpio is a sign of intensity, right? They don't do anything superficially. There's no superficial here. This is a deep, intense sign, and it's about power and regeneration, right? So power, regeneration, intensity, transformation. It is a highly creative sign. It's one of the water signs. Water signs are creative energies. They're emotional energies. This is a very sexual sign. It rules the house in your regular chart of sex, death, and rebirth, the whole idea of transformation and sexuality. It is, as a fixed sign, one that represents loyalty, very much like Leo. Leo is another one of the fixed signs. Loyalty. Aquarius is also a fixed sign. Loyalty, right? So we have loyalty. This is a sign that another keyword would be intimacy, the search for intimacy. It is a sign of healing, sexual healing, psychological healing, physical healing, healing on all the levels. It is mysterious and secretive and seductive, right? That sexuality exudes from them, and it forms a seductive sort of energy, pulls people in, it draws people in. Now, the more negative expressions of Scorpio energy, because we want to look at both, right? No one's going to experience all of the negative, but no one's going to experience all of the positive either. So we need to look at both. And part of that is destruction. Remember, we've been going through Capricorn, Saturn, South Node, and Pluto. Pluto, one of the rulers of Scorpio, is involved in destruction. Annihilation is another word that goes with Scorpio. And think about this, a scorpion, which is the lower symbol for Scorpio. A scorpion would rather sting itself to death than to succumb to another animal or to be caught. So, the scorpion has the tail that comes up, right? So they would rather sting themselves to death. They would rather be annihilated than to succumb to someone else or to something else or the power of something else. There's cruelty sometimes involved with Scorpio energy, seduction that draws people into the dark side or draws people into the negative, manipulation, controlling energies. Betrayal is one of the human things that shadow energies that comes through Scorpio, as abuse and possessiveness and jealousy also come through the sign of Scorpio. So what is Scorpio learning about? Because every sign is here to learn something. And as such, we also, having Scorpio somewhere in our chart, will be learning lessons around the house it's in our chart, but also the things about the sign. So we're learning about emotional closeness, Scorpions, Scorpio, learning about how to be close emotionally, which is also about intimacy, right? How do we become close emotionally? And how do we deal with intimacy in our lives? How do we learn to see the subtle yet profound, i.e. the undercurrents that are at play? And, we've been sort of looking at the undercurrents in our lives over the last couple of days with some of these questions, right, that I've been asking you. And I've actually been answering them for myself in my own life as well. So it's not like I'm offering out assignments and then not doing them myself, because it's very profound to do this work. And it's very much in perfect timing for, this particular season, to see what are those undercurrents, what's in the subconscious mind, right? Having access to that. Penetrating to the core of something. So Scorpio learning to get to the deep. And they do that through a questioning process. They do that through a probing process. As a Gemini, I recoil sometimes from, those intense Scorpio people, because I'm really much more, I don't necessarily want to go deep. I like the superficial. I do like to go deep with knowledge, but that intimacy thing, that penetrating to the core of something, is much more difficult for me as a Gemini. And they are here to learn about penetrating to the core in my own chart somewhere, penetrating to the core in your own personal chart somewhere. They are also learning about sensitivity, sensing what's going on. I have a friend who's actually a Libra, but her birthday is the last day of Libra. And she has about five planets, I think it is, in Scorpio. So Scorpio energy almost overpowers her Libran energy. I still see the Libra, don't get me wrong, but Scorpio energy is very powerful in her chart. And she always asks the most penetrating and deep questions of me. And she provokes me every time with those deep questions. So literally, that Scorpio energy, digging deep, finding that sensitive spot, finding that weakness, finding that point where you're guarding something right within you that you don't want probed yet. So it's a time of the year where we can get deep, where we can, utilize that thinning veil to see something deeper, to see with sensitivity, penetrating to the truth of something. Right? A truth that you've maybe been hiding from yourself. Find yourself a Scorpio friend, and you will definitely have someone that can dig to the heart of something for you. Scorpio's also learning about how to handle crisis and life and death situations, or having to make those life and death decisions. That is, a sign that rules death, right? It's a house of sex, death, rebirth. And in some ways, you could think of Scorpios as having to deal with the more profound and need-based energies, the taboos, right? The things that we don't want to talk about in polite society are the things that Scorpio is really good at, digging into the deep. In the body, Scorpio rules the elimination system. So the lower colon and the removing of waste from the body. And so it is going to the heart, of what it is you're holding on to in order to help you to release it, right? Releasing it. Okay. Now, those are the things particularly Scorpions are learning about. And I also want to remind you, we've talked about this before, Scorpio is I think it is the only sign who has 3 sort of manifestations or symbols that represent it. First being the Scorpion in its lower energy, in its shadow, let's say. The Scorpion is ready to be annihilated, annihilating itself, passive-aggressively killing itself. Passive aggressively stabbing out at other people when it's embodied in the Scorpion. But as it matures and moves forward, it elevates to the sign of the eagle, or the symbol of the eagle, where from a higher perch, from a higher viewpoint, it can see. And the one thing we know about eagles is they have a penetrating vision, right? They can see. I have 200-foot trees out here that eagles perch at the top of, and all of a sudden you'll see them fly off and dive in because they've seen a fish or a duck or something on the ground or in the water that they go after, right? That penetrating eye, they can see to the depth of something. And at the end, in the highest expression, that expression of transformation, Scorpio becomes the phoenix, right? The bird that soars to the sky, immolates, burns, comes down into ash, and regenerates, right? Regenerative. So it has a rich tapestry of symbology associated with it. Now, collectively, what can we expect during this time? Because not all of you out there are, going to be Scorpios. And so some of this stuff may sound familiar to you, but collectively, what can we expect for the next 30 days? For one thing, collectively, it's a time for renewal and regeneration, right? Starting things new. It's a time for reconstruction. Out of the ashes, something new is born. It is a time for reform. So we may see that there are changes that we need to make, that we need to reform. I think it's interesting that here in the United States, and I don't know if it's like this in other parts of the world, but it is the Scorpio time of year where we vote, right? The biggest elections, anyway, happen in November, the first Tuesday in November, which is very clearly Scorpio energy. And it's in the first 10 degrees of Scorpio, which literally is the most profound Scorpion energy. Reform, right? We cast our vote to reform something, or to be in the energy of regeneration, right? Casting our vote. Collectively, it's a time for magic and the occult. Remember, I said the veils are thin. And in that thinning of the veil is the ability for us to see deeper, to see through, right? The occult is literally the word for what's hidden, right? What's not seen. It's interesting, too, when I was, I used to be an optician. I don't know if any of you guys knew that. I used to be an optician. And when we talk about the left eye was always the OS was, in Latin, it was the word for occult. And the left hand and the left eye, the left part of the body, often was seen as left and occult or sinister even. And I just thought that was an interesting connection, right? That the left of anything often is related to the occult. And anyway, collectively, this is a time to bring hidden dimensions to light. Halloween, ghosts, our ancestors, the ability to see through the veil. And, the idea is to shine the light there for purposes of evolution, not just, to prick you where you hurt, or to, find that soft underbelly where, we can easily hurt you or be hurt. But likely we're going to see a lot of that hurt out there as people express what's going on in a reactive sort of way, rather than looking at it deeper and asking those probing questions of themselves. What is this about for me? Now, Scorpio is also the ruler of the 8th house in your astrology chart. So 8th house issues around money are also in play here. So the 8th house, sex, death, and rebirth. Also, other people's money, we call it, or other people's resources. It is a house that rules stocks and bonds and investments. And so likely that's why often this is the time of year where we see a stock market crash, or we hear about interest rates rising or lowering, or we hear about the change in the economy or what's affecting the economy. So it's a very economic focused house in the chart. So we hear about that in the outer world. Investments, taxes, credit, loans, money that comes into you from other people. So in your chart, if you're married, perhaps this is money coming in from your spouse, right? Supporting of the household. It could be resources that come to you from trusts or endowments, or things that what do you call those things? Inheritances. It's a legacy that's left for you, and so money that comes to you from that direction. It can also deal with money that comes from lottery winnings or tax refunds, etc. So the 8th house and monies that come from or out, that are outer world money is often in the news and up in our collective. And I thought I'm going to look at the gates that the sun will be in during the Scorpio time, because sometimes the mandala makes it hard to see exactly where the starting point is and where the ending point is. And by the mandala, I'll show you a picture of a human design mandala. This is it, right? So you see on the outer ring, the very far outer ring, those are the I Ching hexagrams. As you come into the inner ring, you see those numbers that are they seem to be just haphazardly scattered throughout there. And then those are the gates in your human design. Or if you want to look at this through a gene keys way, it's the gene key, right? A gene key or a gate. Inward of that circle, you see the astrological signs. So if I bring this in a little bit over here, you see, no, not over there, over here. There we go. We see Aries. God, I'm such a dork when it comes to looking at... Oh, I would be really bad in a mirror. Okay, anyway, so we see how those gates are aligned with the astrological signs, but there's no real strong, bold mark that really tells you, hey, here's the dividing line. Why? Because the gates often are straddling signs. Like, for instance, this morning I looked for whatever reason at gate 25, and gate 25 straddles both the end of Pisces and the beginning of Aries. So it's harder to see exactly what's right. So for example, this week the sun has been at gate 50. Well, we're still in Libra until 10:20. So part of gate 50 is a Libran experience. And then for the next few days, it's also a Scorpio experience. So it takes on a different view a little bit as we move through. But the sun will primarily be in the gate 50, the gate 28, which is also a fear gate that we'll be talking about next week. And it's the fear of purposelessness. Like, what does all of this mean? Like, is there any real meaning to my existence? Next, it'll be in another spleen gate representing the fear of the past repeating itself, gate 44. And then it moves in or it moves out. The sun finally leaves behind the fear energies and moves into the gate 1. The gate 1, the beginning of the whole drama of humanity, is in self-expression, and that's gate 1. So we'll be dealing with that. And then we go to gate 43, which is where I believe it's Venus that's been there, where we get those breakthrough moments, those ahas, that epiphany that you just go, wow, I have the best idea how to solve this problem. And your genius is there in Scorpio, right? And hidden in there. And then we go to the prosperity gates, gate 14, which represents money that you earn and puts a focus on how money comes to us. And then after that, we're in the sign of Sagittarius and the energy shifts again. So interesting, right? That we see the sort of the crossing over of that Scorpio energy from the fear of the spleen, the scorpion energy, to the eagle energy. I can see things from a higher purpose. I can see my life meaning through self-expression, through my personal genius. And then we shift over to the transformation energy of the phoenix, where we transform it all and we ready ourselves to move on into the Sagittarian realm. It's kind of fascinating when you look at it that way. All right. So Colleen Jackson says, listening for the first time today. Currently, I'm facing a huge pay cut at work after being here 7 years. Whoa, whoa, whoa. So I'm trying to push out of my comfort zone to start the job hunting process. That is sad that, corporations can do that to people. After 7 years, you're taking a pay cut. I don't know exactly what the circumstances are, but Colleen, yesterday, if you go back to my Living Astrology Facebook page, you can click on videos and you can get to tomorrow's video, or you can get to yesterday's video. And in yesterday's video, we rewrote our stories, right? So right now you're facing a story, currently facing a huge pay cut at work after being there 7 years. And I'm trying to push out of my comfort zone to start the job hunting process. Now take that story, flip it up on its head and put it in the now as if you've already moved through this. I found the most wonderful job where they value my work. They value my time. They pay me handsomely for the work I do. I love being there. I love the people that I work with. Am so thrilled that I was able to get outside of my comfort zone and look for this job, because if I hadn't, I wouldn't be as joyful and blissful as I am right now. We're taking the story, turning it upside down, and rewrite in a rewritten format of what it is that it could be, what it is that you want, actually, right? Don't use my words. What would your words be in rewriting your story? That's what we want to do. Looking forward to, awesome. I'm glad. Thank you so much for joining us. We're happy to have you with us. Good morning, Mary tapping Mescal. Mimi says, nice timing for 7th house energy. Indeed. Jennifer, good morning. Amy says, yes, my Scorpio boyfriend is the best to tell anything if I'm afraid to be judged. They make great, and I don't even think that for Scorpio, it's about judgment. It's that they just see so easily through to the heart of something, the heart of the matter, where the rest of us kind of pussyfoot or dance around it. They go right to the heart. That they just go right in. And any number of times with my Scorpio friend, she's gotten right to the heart of things. And then I'm pissed off at her for it, right? It's the funniest thing, right? It's like, now I'm irritated because you've triggered something in me, but it always gives me that opportunity then to work through that provocation that Scorpions are so good at, gives us the opportunity to dig in and look deeper. And damn it, if I don't always find the truth in what it is that she said to me. It's amazing. It's an amazing process. Scorpio really helped me to be okay with who I am. I have Scorpio in the 3rd. Wow. So the mind, right? The 3rd house represents the mind and communication, how you speak and what you speak about, and also then what you think about, right? Your mind digs into deep circles, I would think. And literally then your boyfriend perhaps can help you draw out what's going on in the mind. Where is the mind disconnecting from what could be and settling just for that old story, etc. Good morning, Marissa. Great to see you. And okay, so I think I'm actually at the end of my chit chat here. Unless there's something that you want to talk about, you want to share, let me know here in the chat. Let me see. Are there announcements? I want to remind you all that the Energy Almanac for 2020, which I was a contributing author for the astrology of that, in that book. It's filled with wit, wisdom, and a whole bunch of other stuff, right? Yoga poses and essential oils and numerology and stuff are all in that book as well. And it is available for purchase. And then there is also the Pleiadian-Earth energy calendar for 2020 that is available. And I would say get that now, because then you have it when we seamlessly move into 2020, which is like right now, around the corner. You'll have that at your fingertips. Another reminder, next Wednesday, a week from today at 4 p.m. Pacific time, I will be on the Wisdom of the Ancients show with Ian Shelley, and we are going to be talking about dimensional astrology, which is my code word for the way that I do readings, because it's very difficult for me to just stick with astrology. I did pretty good this morning, but of course, what did I do? I brought in human design because I like to look at things dimensionally. And so that is the subject of our conversation, dimensional astrology, how we can use astrology, human design, and the gene keys to see ourselves more clearly. And that'll be next Wednesday again at 4 p.m. Pacific time. And literally, there's a whole host of people that he is talking to during this summit. And you can also get access to the other people that are on the show as well. Okay. Well, I'm going to sign off, as I have a meeting directly after this morning at 9 o'clock. Don't forget, we break the void of course moon today at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time when the moon moves into Virgo, and that will be 3:30 for you all on the East Coast. So literally on your whole workday, basically on the East Coast, you are in that void. It's time for spirituality. It's time for self looking at the self, looking deeply, and then it will shift as we get into Virgo energy later in the day. And then at 10:20 this morning Pacific time, the sun moves into Scorpio, changing the energy on the planet for the next 30 days. Wow, a lot going on. Not only is, just as I think I'm going to sign off, I always have something more I want to say. Not only is the sun moving into Scorpio, but we also have Mercury in Scorpio, and Mercury's retrograde cycle will be all contained in the sign of Scorpio. So this deep work is very much avant-garde, right? It's right there in our faces right now. And it is the talk of the town. It is what we should be focusing on. It's right there. We have Venus in Mercury, or Venus in Scorpio for the time being. And we'll have Mars in Scorpio not long from now. And so there's a lot of focus on our ability to dig into the depths, right? So at least through December 9th, when finally, and it's not even December 9th, it'll be later than that when Mercury moves out of Scorpio and into the next sign of Sagittarius. So we've got a long-term process of looking into the depths. Take advantage of it. It's not always the most comfortable thing to do, but it is the most valuable thing to do, to get to the heart of something, to get to where your Achilles heel is, to get to what has you stuck in the muck, and to bring it up, air it out, let it see the light of day, and transform it and move on. That's the potential. That's the high side of all of this. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining me this morning. I will see you tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Pacific, and 11 o'clock on the East Coast. All right, guys, take care. Have a great day. Bye for now.